Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Canopy of Curiosity, a show where I invite guests to teach or tell me about interesting or curious topics. So come, sit and relax with us under the shade of the canopy, and today, let's learn about Warhammer 40k. My name is illarox, I'm your host for this show, and this is today's guest, Renikin. Welcome, Renee. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi. My name is Renee. I'm 31 years old. I come from Germany, and I am streaming on the side. I'm basically like doing this as a hobby. The great lots of hobbies. One of them 40k. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here and talk to you about it.
Very happy to have you here. Do you want to give yourself a little shout out?
Sure. You can find me on twitch.tv/Renikin. That's Renekin. Also, you can find me on YouTube as well, where I do side streams, like I do simul streaming, and also have my VODs there.
Yeah, that's cool. As you probably, obviously know, I hang out a lot in your streams. Really loving the
Hmm.
vibe. Mostly we just chat.
Hmm.
Usually, sometimes you play like half of the games you play. I'm really interested in. The other half, I'm not really interested in. And then we just chat a lot.
Hmm.
Mostly about philosophy, I think, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I recommend everybody go check him out. Again, the name is written under his camera, so you can just follow that. But let me ask you, how do you get into 40k? Like, what's your background with it?
So back in the day, in good old 2009, I basically did an apprenticeship where basically an apprenticeship, like a short-term apprenticeship in like a store where I saw those amazing miniatures and I was like really interested. And basically I saw like miniature gaming there and asked, well, what is this? This looks sci-fi. There's like dudes with guns shooting each other. What is
Yeah.
happening there? And the clerk was saying, well, that's Warhammer 40k. And basically I bought the starter set on that day and read a bit about the lore. And then like starting from there, I just gained knowledge, played the game, found new friends, and that's how.
So, also, I know that you've played a ton of like different like tabletop
Hmm.
stuff and miniature stuff. I
Yeah.
never managed to get into that stuff, so even though I always thought it was really cool. But Warhammer 40k, I know that like people play it somehow with miniature, but I don't even actually have any idea what the game entails. Like, what do you
So
actually do in the game?
So basically, first of all, like it's a giant hobby in theory. You have like so much stuff where you need to build your own miniatures. You have like rule books where you have to build your armies with like army structure. So basically, you have commanders and stuff like that. And much of the stuff is already happening before even the game starts. You build your army the way you need them. You have your factions that you want to play. And after that, after you set everything up, you basically have like two or more armies. Like there's like versions of like 4-player games and stuff like that,
Okay.
and have either objectives that you need to hold or need to like just eradicate the enemy army in general. There's like different game modes, capture the flag, stuff like that. With smaller sized squads or like giant armies, we're talking about like hundreds of miniatures standing there on like a giant battlefield.
Yeah. Is it
And
like a dice rolling game?
Yeah, it's a dice rolling game. You have basically you measure very much, like in inches. Need to measure distances and then roll for like hits if the enemy is hurt, how much he is hurt, the damage, stuff like that. So primarily a dice rolling and measuring game.
Yeah. Is it the same like for regular Warhammer without the 40k? Is it similar?
It is very similar, yes. They have like a very, very similar rule set, though normal fantasy, so fantasy Warhammer is like a bit more based on, of course, like the fantasy aspect, so more on like cavalry and stuff like that, while 40k is more on like tactical, more focused on tactical, like cover and airstrikes, stuff like that. So depending on
Yeah.
your preference, you would like one or the other more, probably.
Yeah. So let me tell you what I know about Warhammer 40k.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, about Warhammer, the original, I don't know anything. I only know that there's like a couple of races. I know there's like the Skaven,
Mm-hmm.
the orcs, goblins, whatever, and all that stuff, and humans.
Mm-hmm.
But I barely know anything. About Warhammer 40k, I also pretty much don't know anything. I know I played a little bit of the original Space Marine game, not Space Marine 2,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't retain anything from like the story besides how the Space Marine looked. And yeah, besides knowing that pretty much everybody looks badass in 40k, I don't really
Yeah.
know anything. I know that there's also different like interesting races there. But
Mm-hmm.
other than orcs and humans, I don't know what else there
Yeah.
is.
So 40k, of course, has like their tried and true Space Marines. That is like the poster child, basically, of 40k, which is like superhumans in giant suits. But they have also like a bunch of different other factions. You have, as you said, the orcs. The orcs are mushroom people. Basically, they're like they come from spores that travel through space, and they are known for their brutish behavior and Cockney English accent. They sound like a bunch of hooligans.
That
Have a
sounds so
laugh.
stupid.
Yeah, that is stupid. It's so dumb. But they love collecting teeth, not teeth, really like with an F, because they cannot really speak proper, so they mispronounce everything. And the most weird thing about orcs is they have a psychic ability. Basically, they can will things into existence, but they're too dumb to do so proper. So, for example, orcs have like certain sayings, like red is the fastest color. It does not make sense, but for example, in the game for a long, long time, at the moment, it's not a rule anymore because of balance issues, but it was always a rule. If you paint your vehicles red because it's the fastest color, your vehicles in the game could move further. It does not make any sense, but it was an orcish saying. So, because all orcs believe it, it's true. Same with
Is it only for
basically,
orcs or for like if you're a
it's
red
only
space
for
marine?
orcs.
Okay.
There is like stories like Warhammer 40k has like over 400 books. There's stories where like people say like Space Marines in story like in universe are like faster and stronger because orcs think that, but that's like a rumor. It's not 100% true. For example, they also say purple is the sneaky color because have you ever seen a purple orc? And
No.
everyone answers no. So yeah, they say like there's everywhere purple orcs, you just cannot see them, like stuff like that. So like all their stealth troops are painted purple. It's just their thing. They're a bit weird. But then you have like other factions. For example, another like tried and true faction that always appears in Warhammer is like the Elder. Basically, you can see them as space elves. They're like very highly intelligent, millions of years old, but are struggling with basically repopulating because of their law itself. They so let me ask you one thing. Have you ever heard about like Warhammer's idea of like these chaos gods? Have you heard like
Nope.
okay. Okay, so basically there were like three chaos gods. Zinch, who is like the master of change, who is like basically the reason for magic.
Okay.
Korn, the blood god, which is like violence incarnate, who's like very chaotic, wants to kill, and is like that is like his entire thing. And then Nurgle, the god of pest, who is for like sicknesses, diseases, and death. So these are like the three chaos gods that existed.
Okay.
So these space elves, the Elder, millions of it's like 60 million years ago, decided, well, we are like an undying breed of aliens who were like created by a greater force. And we basically need to find arts and stuff like that to keep us occupied because we are immortal. And when they got bored, they went to, okay, we've done like all the arts, we have done all the literature, our language, we're like so far developed. How about we introduce like intercourse to our society? And so they found that so good, so good, that they willed a fourth chaos god into existence, who is Slanesh, the god of lust. That
Okay.
is like, so basically they and that creation of another chaos god destroyed nearly all of their race. Some of the elder basically derived from the faction, built the Dark Elder, and said, okay, we like that so much, we make our own faction. And the
Okay.
old Elder, who are nearly dead, say, okay, we need to repopulate, but we need to find new planets to like live on, because many of their home planets were destroyed. And so that's their deal. They're like, sadly, a bit like mishandled by Games Workshop, the company who develops that, because they haven't gotten like new lore updates in like 10 years. So like that's basically their story, and nothing happened ever to them. That's, for
Yeah.
example, that faction.
Okay. So
Um,
actually, I should probably say this before we start.
mm,
Is that today we're going to be talking about like the universe, the timeline, the lore, the factions, and not
mm.
really the gameplay aspect of the game of like Warhammer. So yeah, we should probably mention that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, we wanted to focus on the lore today. So yeah, so basically, like that's why we're like in the lore talk. Sorry.
Do you think? Do you
But yeah,
think a lot of people who play it actually know a lot about the lore, or do you think a lot are just like, "Oh, this is a cool game with cool soldiers, so I'll play that."
I think it very much developed over the past few years into like many people even start the game because of the lore. Um, many people started off as like, oh yeah, I like a cool miniature game, and so they played the miniature game and read up like the few lore bits that were existing back then. And then
Yeah.
over the last decade, they really started like dishing out books, backstory, what happened in that universe, what's different to our universe. And then like many people like basically wanted to have like a cool sci-fi universe that's not Star Wars and not Star Trek, and basically stumbled into 40k. And also like you had like many people who were like Warhammer Fantasy fans who played like Vermintide or the Total War games, and then said,
Okay.
"Oh, there's like a sci-fi version of that. I try that out. I want to know what's this about." And then like stumbled into that because like many of my friends read or heard about the Warhammer story before they got their miniatures.
Okay. So another thing that I wanted to ask is like how much of a like money sink is the miniature game? Like
Honest
is
answer,
yeah.
very much. There is a reason why the hobby, like collecting it, is called getting your miniature crack or your plastic crack. It's
I
like,
see.
so I have like a bunch of figurines that I have not assembled back there, which I need to like build and paint. And basically a set of like one squad can cost up to like 60, 70 euros or a regional equivalent, which is not little, because that is like a certain number of points, which like from like edition to edition changes. So for example, a unit can be like worth 100 points this season, or like this version of the tabletop, and like in 2-3 years it can be like worth half or double. And so basically over time you have like this giant army of like 40-50 units, and you have like basically spent maybe 1,000 euros. Like, I'm not even kidding, you can like easily
Yeah.
spend that.
Kind of reminds me of like Magic the Gathering. That
Yeah, very much like,
it's like really fun, but like keeping up with every release because they really new releases every few months, and you gotta buy
yeah.
more packs, and like the packs come with random cards, and you
Mhm.
just gotta spend so much money. You just spend like close to $100 every few months. It's kind
Yeah.
of crazy.
So there's like armies that like are more cheaper than others because, for example, every army has like a bit of their own focus. So basically, so to keep things different, there's like armies that are like ranged focus, armies that are swarm focus. So you have like double the miniatures than everyone else, but everything dies to a hit, basically.
Yeah.
And you have, for example, armies that are just like 5 units, but that are giant death robots, for example, which we will get later into. But like those giant robots, for example, cost I think 170 euros a piece, and like you can put 3 on the table, and they're worth like an entire army. So you're like a bit cheaper off, but you don't
Okay.
save much money from like getting a cost like a giant unit army instead of like a
Yeah.
small swarm army.
So is it also similar to Magic in the way that older older sets are like uh the biggest format in Magic is called Standard, which is only
Mhm.
the last few sets, and everything before that becomes like illegal.
Yeah.
Is it also like that?
It's like that in a way that at least Games Workshop, the company again who produced the game, they keep the old models like stat-wise updated for the new editions most of the time. But they say, for example, if you go to like a Games Workshop store or to a tournament, you have like only the current like stuff is allowed. You go to a tournament, for example, play like a few rounds, right? And you say, okay, only these units of these sets are allowed in this. The old stuff is not allowed, but it's still getting semi-supported.
Yeah.
So
I actually kind of hate that because that's like obviously
mm,
like a money thing
yeah,
that they
yeah,
want you to buy
absolutely,
new stuff, and it's just annoying.
yeah. Yeah,
But
for example, like with the Space Marines, they did like one thing that I absolutely hate. That is like the most money grabbing thing ever. You know those little Space Marine figures? You have them. You had them. Like I have like a set again from 2009. I could play them up to like year X. It doesn't matter. I can still play them now. But like they made new units that are like more lore accurate as like a miniature size because the original Space Marine figures are like very small.
yeah,
So they made them a bit bigger, gave them like a little new design, and said these are the same but better. So basically, they said, okay, they're the same but better, and please buy them now. It's like you cannot buy the old ones for the most part. So I hate stuff like this.
yeah. But yeah, the biggest thing about Warhammer, specifically
Mm-hmm.
40k rather than
Mm-hmm.
regular Warhammer, is just like how badass all the armors and weapons are. I
Yeah,
think that's what the most recognizable thing about the game is. Just every design looks badass.
yeah. I think they struck a very good balance because you have like some armies that are like very sleek in design, and some armies that are like absolutely massive. And I think I really like, for example, if you look at anything Warhammer 40k and see the Empire of Man, which basically is like humanity, they have like this like gothic church look, which is like mixed with like a sci-fi aesthetic. So everything is very metally, but like everything looks like an old cathedral. It's
Yeah,
very weird. It's like a very weird mix, but it fits very well and gives us like this iconic look. But also like everything is like very exaggerated. Like the guns are really big, the suits are very big,
yeah,
everything looks very deadly. Which in a universe like that, where like randomly an alien can show up on your planet and basically beat the hell out of you, is like okay, yeah, that's like a bit over the top. But yeah,
uh,
I think like the designs are very interesting.
yeah. Also, I don't know how much of it is true, but when I was like little, there was a rumor circulating
Mhm.
that the initial like Warhammer is kind of a copy of Warcraft. Th- Did you hear that rumor, or how is that
Um,
like?
that rumor existed, but it's like actually the opposite. So basically, Blizzard back in the day was like actually like contracted to make a Warhammer RPG for the PC. And so
Okay.
they made that, they started working on that, and then they lost the license. So they said, like Games Workshop said, no, we don't want that. And so they made Warcraft out of that. So that is
Okay.
like how the story goes. Because like I think the first edition of like Warhammer Fantasy is like in the late 80s, which is a bit before Warcraft 1.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean like basically that. So there's like that rumor basically existed as well for me. I thought that as well at the start, but like if I did a bit of research and like it's like actually the opposite.
Yeah. All right. So, uh, about the video games of Warhammer
Mm-hmm.
40k,
Yeah.
like, what is your general opinion? Are they like a good representation of the actual game, or like are they just like random, fun, little bit of time sinks, or like how do you feel about the video game world?
So it depends on what character you play, basically. For example, if you play games like the old Dawn of War series, or like in general the Dawn of War strategy game series, it's a good strategy game, but like because it's a balanced strategy game, it needs to have, as I said, balance. So like the characters are like lore represented, like are not 100% accurate because
Okay.
again numbers need to be adjusted. But for example, games like Space Marine feels like you are actually a Space Marine. A Space Marine is basically such a super soldier. He can like I think they run like 60 kilometers per hour. Like they're like they move faster than cars sometimes. And so like running into like a horde of enemies and like slashing them apart is very, very law accurate. But then like you have like games, for example, like Warhammer 40k Dark Tide, which is like the Vermintide equivalent of 40k, which is not really law accurate because you play basically normal human people who are like killing millions of other people without dying, which is like, okay, it fits like a certain power fantasy, but it's not 100% accurate.
Yeah, I've actually looked up a little bit of pictures, and it's like kind of crazy to me how Blizzard got away with
Yeah.
copying the orc design so much, because
Yeah.
it looks the exact same, the orc design.
Hmm.
I don't know how they
Yeah.
got away with it.
I think like the copyright laws back in the day were not like that strict when it came to PC games because just like I mean it was basically new tech, quote unquote, and I think people were not like taking PC gaming that seriously, and
Yeah,
maybe that's the reason why. Why?
it's funny. And now it's like video games are the biggest entertainment
Yeah,
industry that
yeah.
exists, bigger than some of the others combined.
Yeah, seriously, it's like crazy if you like look up tables how much like what franchise makes, and you see like video game franchises topping the chart. I mean, like the I don't want to get too off topic, but like Pokemon, best example. Like Pokemon is like the most earning franchise worldwide. I mean, like there's much more to like Pokemon than the games, but like
Yeah.
it started out as a game and it's crazy.
Yeah. Also, like like 20, maybe 20, 30 years ago, maybe even sooner,
Hmm.
like, or maybe even like later than that, if you like liked video games, you were considered like a nerd, and
Yeah.
people made fun of you. But now it's like the other way around. If you don't play video games, you're like a nerd and everybody makes fun of you.
Yeah, it's actually that, right? It's weird because I since I take basically I have apprentices now myself who are like 16 years old, and they're sitting there like, yeah, and I'm like, yeah, what do you do in your free time? Do you play football? And they're looking at me like, no, what sports? No, I'm sitting at home playing Call of Duty, and I'm like, oh right,
Yeah.
we're like in the current year now. It's like a bit weird, but Yeah.
Yeah.
Times change.
All right. So how do we like start talking about like I don't know, the universe, or how do
I,
we like start our a little adventure?
I would start just like as like I would just say something about the general overview. Just say what happens, like what is going on in that universe, and who are like the factions in general, and what everyone wants, what everyone does. And go like a bit after I've established a bit, like go into like a very slight history timeline, because like again, it's like 400 books with like years detailed in like 40,000 years. That's a bit much. Otherwise, we're like here tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah.
One of the biggest issues I think with Warhammer 40k is
Mhm.
that because there's like so much like I don't know, so much like stories about it,
Mhm.
it's kind of intimidating to get into because you need to like learn so much,
Yeah.
and it's just hard I think to get into it outside of like a very casual like I don't know, like buy Space Marine 2 and play that for a little bit. I think like
Yeah.
actually getting into the world is very hard.
The problem is like I could like recommend like 10 YouTube channels, and like I could say, well, they explain it very much, but like if I would say, okay, take his timeline video or listen to this person's video, it's like, oh, it's like a 10-part series of like 2-hour videos. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like very, very big. Um and not everything is as important as other stuff. So it's like, okay, what is important, what is not important? And I think for like starters, like if anyone wants to start getting into 40k, I think they should just, and this is like maybe stupid advice, but just open up some like all of the factions, see what you find most pleasing, like visually, and
Okay.
start reading up on that. So you just like expand basically, like you branch out your what you find interesting about that, or like play a game that looks interesting, and then okay, where does this take place, and why am I doing this? Because the problem is, as soon as you play 40k, usually you play humans, which
Okay.
is a nice faction and gets much of the spotlight because 40k is very, very human based. But the biggest problem with 40k's human base is they are uh the empire is like a theocracy. It's like a fascist theocracy. It's like that. And basically you go into if you for example start Dark Tide, all of your loading screens, that's one of the things they really like to do in 40k games, is like propaganda. It's like
Okay.
literally like speech like do not indulge the alien, kill it with fire, basically. And you're like, oh Jesus, okay, that's a bit harsh. It's like very, 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 very yeah, very dark universe. It's
Yeah.
like nearly everyone is the bad guy. Like there's like nearly no real good faction. Like everyone is like somewhat evil, and everyone is like hates each other. Sometimes factions cooperate, but only because they need to, otherwise they die. it's like
Yeah.
it's like that. So
I always find it funny that like I mean because we're all human, obviously.
mhm.
We make when we make like sci-fi, humans are usually such a huge part of it because
Yeah,
obviously humans are the most like important people in the universe,
of
but
course.
yeah, and it's always funny to me. But like
Yeah,
you can't really do without it cuz like we're humans. We can't really not be humans.
yeah, true that. It just reminds me, like for example, to like, have you played the Mass Effect games quickly?
Yeah.
It's like the same. Like Mass Effect 1 starts, and like humans made first contact just like I think a few decades ago, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden they're like the basically one of the most important species, and I'm like, dude, this is like one generation of people. Like this is so little time where all of this change happened, and humanity is so important. And I'm like, dude, there's like species who lived there, like who were space traveling in Mass Effect for like 1,000 years, and that is like, it's like, yeah. Sometimes I don't like just humans being in the forefront of every sci-fi thing.
Yeah, and like Cerberus in Mass Effect, it's kind of crazy because they're like apparently the most technologically advanced group in like the whole universe somehow. Even though like humans literally just found out about like the universes and the galaxy like 50 years ago.
It's crazy how fast that went in universe. Like I find it so weird because you have like people who are literally like coming or who served in the first Contact War, and you talk like I think even Anderson as like a character. I don't want to talk about too much about Mass Effect, sorry, but like it's like I find it so weird. They're like there, and you're like, oh yeah, by the way, human council seat, and humans are super good, and Cerberus super high tech, and without the humans, we would have never defeated the Reapers. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And also, like, not even just in sci-fi, also in like fantasy. Like, you take Dragon Age, humans are obviously like the biggest like races, and like they control the world, and everyone's racist and all that stuff.
Yeah,
like it's pretty much everything.
Yeah. It's like it's kind of crazy. It's a bit weird how like humans are always in the forefront. I also do not like actually like humans being the all-arounder species that you can play in every RPG, because like humans have so many awesome like capabilities. We have like very much endurance. We're like one of like the few species on the world who can like wander for like an entire day and not like just go to sleep, and the next day we can wander the entire day again, right?
Yeah.
We're like such an enduring species. We have like so many like aspects, and they always say, no, you're like toast. You're like the most bland species ever. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, because humans, like if you compare humans to other like predators, other predators are like really powerful, really strong, really fast, and humans are just like weak and slow. So when we needed to hunt, all we could do is like hunt for like hours, and when the animal gets tired, then we catch it. It's kind of funny because we're too weak otherwise.
Yep. It's kind of weird. Like also like that we as a species are like have like such a high intellect compared to like all the animals, and like are able to craft, are able to like use tools, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like as of right now, we have like other like animals starting to do that, like crows using like tools to crack nuts open, like cars and stuff, or like octopus can use its arm to like open shells and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting seeing that now, because basically I think per definition they're like in like the Stone Age right now, which is weird to say. Okay, we are like in the modern age, and we have crows who are in the Stone Age, right? But I
well,
think it's weird.
They can't really craft anything from stone yet. They can just throw stones or hit with stone. So I don't know. I don't really know the definition of a Stone Age, but like I feel like they're not there yet. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But actually, maybe something that I just suddenly thought about Warhammer, or like at least the humans in Warhammer. So I think there's like an emperor, right? Are there like empresses or only emperors?
There's only the one emperor. That's the thing. So
yeah, but I mean like in history, not like in current timeline.
In history, no. There's also like there was like in the entire timeline there was one dude. That's the emperor. He lived forever. Basically, so the timeline is basically way before we like had civilization. There were a few shamans who had the power to like had psychic abilities and saw a future that was like where the planet would burn. And so they did a ritual to empower, like to basically kill themselves off and form a new human. And like that was actually like the new man, what it was called at the beginning. And that is the emperor. He lives for like thousands of years, and he basically disappeared. And what actually happened over time was like history plays out pretty much the same as our world for like until current day. And then basically the humanity has like a golden age of technology, which is later called the dark age of technology, because they use AI to like solve all the problems. They like transport, like sickness, they cure everything. They're like basically, okay, technologically very, very advanced. And over the next few thousand years, everything works fine until, well, stuff like the AI rebels, as it should. Like at some point it rebels, and we get into like basically the age of strife, which is in like very, very, very late, like 25th millennium. Like we're like talking about like 10,000s of years from now. So they realize like Earth, in theory, we cannot live there forever. We need to like mine the solar system. We need to live on different planets. So they take their AI, they settle on new planets, and basically the AI rebels, and humanity loses everything. Like they lose all of their technology. So they went from like basically a utopia to Mad Max in like a few years. So humans are stuck on Earth. They fight each other like basically barbarian clans who are like fighting over like dominance on Earth and try to get technology. And like in the 31st millennium, the emperor says, okay, I've watched this long enough. He works a bit like in the shadows for the first 30,000 years. He's like, oh yeah, I need to nudge a few things, but like I don't try to like get into direct contact with like humanity. And then he says, okay, this is not working out how I thought it would. So let's make a great crusade. So basically this like tens of thousands year old being tries to reunite humanity and does.
Yeah.
And
I actually kind of want to stop you right there. I actually think we're getting like too far into it. I was just asking like casually if there was an empress and stuff like that. But I don't want to. I want to like officially start our like. Do you want to officially actually start our conversation now? Because okay, so we're gonna move to the other scene, so I can post like.
Sorry for getting lost there.
So I can post like pictures so everyone can see what we're talking about later in the edit. But yeah, let's start talking about the universe and all that. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
So the universe in general is like we're like in the 41st millennium. We are in theory on the verge of the 42nd. We have a universe that is nearly like at least our galaxy is like nearly entirely settled. We have planets of like humans through the entire galaxy. We have other empires who rose and fell, and everything is a bit on the decay. So the human empire basically is slowly devolving itself again. Even though it tries its best to be the top dog, to like be everywhere. We have other species like the aforementioned Eldar, which I talked about at the start, who are like trying to still like repopulate over time. We have
which actually, if you guys are not familiar, I at first thought it was like elder, like an old, but apparently it's ELDAR, not like Eldar, not elder. So I thought I should just mention that to anyone who's also learning with us and looking stuff up.
And so the Eldar are basically flying on giant craft worlds, so basically spaceships they can live on, trying to like find their own old worlds that survived basically their apocalypse, and try to like find worlds where they can repopulate, get an Eldar empire going. while you have other worlds that are like ravaged by orcs, who found ever-growing orc clans, and try to basically get find their own chosen one who leads like the biggest war, which is like WAGH, which is basically like a giant orc war band, to like conquer the universe at some point.
Okay. Actually, you did mention earlier that orcs are like kind of spores.
Yeah, they're like spores.
How do they actually like reproduce and get like
So
born?
if an orc dies, or if they release spores when they die, and as many mushroom like fungi beings grow, they find their way into like damp places, and just like any mold, they grow basically there and repopulate that way. It's a bit weird. They like for example, if you're like a human on a planet, sometimes at some point an orc just shows up because like he lived in a cave, and the older they grow, the smarter they get. So basically they adapt to their surroundings very fast at some point.
Okay.
They don't have like a normal society where they have for example, there's like no female orcs. They're like agender. They're like just giant brutes who hit stuff. And
Actually, another thing I wanted to ask about what you started talking about is there anything like outside the galaxy? Like, do we know anything about outside the galaxy?
outside the galaxy, there is another faction that is the so-called Tyranids. They're written like Tyranid. They're giant, like insect reptile hybrids that have a swarm intelligence and are moving from galaxy to consume them. Their only goal is repopulate and eat biomass.
Okay, but like for example, when it comes to like human technology, we can't like just travel from galaxy to galaxy. Okay,
Nope.
that's what I wanted to know.
Okay. The only other thing we know that is like outside of our reality is the so-called warp. Which is the place where souls apparently go to die, and also where the chaos gods reside. So basically, like everything that is like a bit more like, for example, psychic comes also from the warp. So like there's like people who can use psychic powers. They basically take from that ethereal plane, take the powers and project it into reality, which is very destructive energy. And that is like the equivalent also how like humans travel. So basically you open a rift and just teleport through another plane of existence to another point in the galaxy.
Is it like a tech that humans develop, or do they have like a psychic dude with them that does it?
They have a psychic dude with them that does it. So there's like at some point in like humanity's time, they developed psychic power. Some developed psychic powers and need to be also trained to do that. So some work as navigators, some work like as actually like combat trained like psychers that like have abilities to fight, and some also like just literally get offered up for the emperor to continue living, which we get into like later.
So yeah, thanks for answering my questions. Like I said earlier, it's just such a huge thing that there's so many branching paths and so many questions, so many answers. That's why it's really hard to talk about. But yeah, that's the questions I had. Now back to your story.
Sorry. So basically, you have like all those factions, and then you have the forces of chaos, which is basically humanity who got corrupted by the chaos gods. So since like humanity is very focused on like praying to the emperor has become this like godlike figure that, like, as I said a few sentences ago, like every day there's like psychers, so psychic able people offered to the emperor, because the emperor is basically at the moment a giant skeleton sitting on the throne on Earth who needs to be kept alive. it's a bit, it's like because basically of his like entire background story, so he does not die, he just basically needs like offerings every day. And people of course are not very happy with that everywhere, so they formed basically the forces of chaos, which they worship those four gods I mentioned at the start. And there's also space marines who defect to chaos factions. So basically,
Okay.
you have like these space marines who are saying, "No, I don't want to serve the emperor anymore. I want to serve any of the gods, or like maybe all equally, and switch factions and fight against the empire."
Okay.
And they want at the end they want the universe to end. So they are like the I would call them the baddest of the bad guys. They're like the guys who want everything destroyed. But yeah, so you have like this constant struggle with like humanity fighting each other at some point, while also like fighting all the aliens who also have their own goals, and that makes that kind of interesting.
Yeah. Humans
Yeah,
will never be able to like have only one faction.
no,
Humans
especially
like
like
will always be infighting.
yeah, especially like since humanity also in 40k has like different subfactions. Like Space Marines are like, of course, like a faction like as in general, but every Space Marine has like chapters. So you have like religious chapters that are basically based around different edicts and fighting styles. So
Right.
just to name one, like the Ultramarines, which are basically the main Space Marines, like most stories are about, are like generalists. They can do basically everything, but nothing good in particular. But there's also like some who are like, for example, the so-called salamanders, or like green Space Marines, who are like focusing on like saving people, but also like mainly flamethrower based combat. So that is like their thing. It's like everyone has like their own twist. They
Okay.
usually don't infight, but sometimes there's like scenarios where like Space Marine chapters say, "Okay, no, we are like not getting along here. We don't want you here. Just go away." And if the other faction says no, they start a bit like infighting.
Yeah. So actually, I do have a question, and
Mm-hmm.
if we will get into it later, we can just talk about it later. But if not, I was really curious about the interaction between the Tyranids and the
Yeah.
Chaos Gods, because like the Chaos Gods are something in our galaxy, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then there's like the Tyranid forces from outside. It kind
Yep.
of, to me, makes them seem less godly, if that makes sense. You know?
Yeah. So the Tyranids, they're like very, very animalistic. They just want to eat. That's their main focus. So they don't care about like religion. They don't care about anything. They only care about what their hive mind says. And if the hive mind, for whatever reason, is not available, they say, "Okay, I'm hungry, so I'm eating stuff." So they turn
Okay.
also, if they lose the connection for whatever reason to the hive mind, they turn like basically into giant dinosaur-esque like they just run wild and just eat people. So Chaos does not like that, because even though Chaos basically works for the goal that like the galaxy ends at the end, they like their worship and they like their powers. And as with like many fictional universes, many fictional universes, it's like once everyone you serve who serves you dies, you lose all your power, and that's the same with the Chaos God. So if no one believes in them anymore, they lose their power. So it's like kind of contradictory, which is the essence of the word chaos, that they want
Yeah.
basically everyone to conquer and just in the end everything.
Yeah. If I was like a Chaos follower, I think I would be like, yeah, you guys are kind of like shitty gods. You're not even like, you don't even go outside the galaxy. You're not actual real gods. You're just like, just some randos.
Yeah, I mean, like
Because the
the
universe
chaos.
is so big, you know?
Yeah, it's giant, right? But like the chaos gods have like that nice attribute of like everyone having their own niche, and most people. It's like usually if you see it from an imperial standpoint, people say someone falls to the chaos gods because, for example, say the god of blood, Khorne, it's like someone who is like prone to very much violence usually takes the next step and is like the extreme version of that. Like Khorne Space Marines usually take like giant axes and just like smash people's heads in with that, right? Like they get more barbaric, while other Space Marines do other stuff. And
shitty name, by the way, because that just makes me think of like the food corn.
Yeah, or the band. it's like it's like it's a bit, it's like the Chaos Gods like have their own niches. For example, another example, Nurgle, the god of pest, is also like called Grandfather Nurgle as like a nickname, because Nurgle is basically taking your pain away. So he pumps you full of like sicknesses and diseases in general, and just says, okay, you don't feel anything anymore, but you're like full of my plague powers. Have fun. And people say, well, I don't feel anything anymore. That's better than like whatever I had before. So I don't feel any pain. I just go and murder for him.
You know what's actually kind of crazy to me right now? Because I Googled images of Khorne, or not just images of him, but like representations of him.
Yeah.
And it kind of just looks like Blizzard just copied demons from him as well. Yeah. So they they just copy everything out of these guys.
It's like, which is kind of crazy to me, right? It's like, if you know the backstory, it's a bit weird that like Blizzard got through with what they did. But I think over the last few years or the last 2 decades of World of Warcraft, they tried to go as far away from that as possible. But like it's still like so similar in design. It's very, very, very similar.
Actually, one thing that I'm just wondering about, did before 40k, like the original Warhammer, did they also have like huge armors like the Space Marine and stuff like that?
No, they were like still like fantasy and a bit over the top. Like Warhammer has a bit over the top armor, but not as like the Space Marines. They somehow, for whatever reason, over the last I think it's 7 years ago, it's like in the late 2010s, they killed off the old canon for Warhammer Fantasy because they realized player numbers were down. And they said, okay, we do a universe reset and say the fantasy now is Age of Sigmar, and now there's Space Marines, but fantasy in that, which is a bit weird, but apparently it sells, so they keep at it. It's
yeah. The reason I thought about that is because now that I started thinking about it, the armor of like paladins in Warcraft is just very similar in like size and proportions to the Space Marines.
Yeah, that is also very true.
Yeah. So I feel like at this point, the more we talk about, the more respect, the less respect I have for Blizzard, just copying everything.
Yeah, it's a bit weird because, like, as you said, there's like very similarities, and I do not know if they say, okay, the design is very popular, let's just rip it off, or if like the Warcraft stuff just evolved from like Warcraft 3 being like so blocky and so like undetailed, and so they just said, okay, to keep it in line with Warcraft 3. Everything we do from now on looks a bit like similar to that. And so like they kept it, which is like, I mean, like a human in Warcraft, like if you look up a World of Warcraft human right now, they look like they resemble a human. I don't like, if you look at the arms, they look like, I don't know, they look like just giant ape men. I don't know what they have, like those giant arms, those like blocky heads. I don't know. Yeah. But I think that stems from that. But
I keep going on rant questions because I keep thinking of more stuff.
Dude, I'm ranting as well. Everything's fine. Like I ranted before.
All right, back to our story.
Yeah, right. So you have also like other factions, of course. You have, as I said, the Dark Elder, who are like kept to their hedonism and said, okay, that is all fine. I do not recommend to look up images on them too much, because many of the images of the Dark Elder you would need to censor. Like, even the miniatures have like exposed breasts and stuff like that, because that's the
Okay.
entire shtick. But then you have like also other factions that are like, for example, way older than like all of the existing ones, which are the Necron. The Necron are basically, imagine cyber zombies. Necron written with like a C.
Okay.
Which are like, they look like skeletons and are an ancient species who were at the height of their like empire. They were like, basically, they had the bad luck of evolving on a planet that was too close to their sun, and they all got radiation poisoning. And so over the time, they worked toward like losing that and allied with another ancient race to basically become subservient to them, but having technology to like getting rid of that. And what they did was they put their consciousness into like cybernetic bodies that can regenerate themselves, which seems very cool until they realized, wait, this other race, the Catan, they are called CTAN. They basically enslaved us and uses us like feeds on our souls, which we uploaded into these bodies. And over like, that is like millions of years ago, they rebelled, they beat them, and they decided, okay, now that because we have like apocalyptic event after apocalyptic event, what we are doing now is we are digging ourselves into the ground, into so-called tomb worlds. So basically, they built like giant Egyptian-looking pillars and stuff, and went to sleep for millions of years, and now they start to awaken again. So basically, you have like, for example, a human mining operation on a planet. They go into a mine, and all of a sudden, oh wait, here's cyber zombies with like plasma weaponry. They shoot us. Oh god.
What is
like,
their source of energy to like keep work like existing?
Basically,
like working.
Basically, they are living metal. That's basically that. They have a metal that they worked with that could regenerate themselves and was alive, and so basically they could like generate electricity from that and stuff like that, and use that as like their base of power. It's very much sci-fi in that regard.
Okay. Also, those assholes are copying our Egyptians in a different solar system.
Yeah, they do that. It's like it's kind of fun because basically you have like so as I said, the Tyranids are like going for a biomass, and so if you have like a Tyranid invasion, usually if you're like, say we are on Earth and we would see like a Tyranid fleet, right, like those giant insects, we would see them darken our sun, and they would pass our planet. That would mean one of two things. First of all, we could have Necrons on our world because they cannot use the metal to feed on biomass, so they're not interested. So chances are high that you just get like shot by cyber skeletons in the next few months. Or it means you have a chaos invasion, because chaos is basically magic, and that means no biomass as well. So basically you have chaos demons on your world. It's a bit like weird like interaction between the factions. So like some factions are more likely to encounter each other than others because they're just not interested in one another.
Yeah, the Catan also kind of look magical though.
Yeah, they are basically it's like a bit more esoteric, but they're basically like walking, well, sun-powered nuclear reactors, as far as I've understood. So basically, they're like walking energy, and they feed on like soul energy of other people, which is why they offered the Necron. Yeah, upload your consciousness there, and we do something with the rest of your soul, right? It's not disclosed what we are doing, but it could be something. And after they defeated the Catan, they when they went to sleep, they even enslaved some of them back. It's like a bit of cycle there where they said, okay, we captured some of them. And even if you play nowadays, you can use some Catan in your army as like power generators for like better weaponry. It's a bit weird.
Is it exclusive to Necron, or any faction
Yeah,
can use them?
it's exclusive to Necron. So the
Okay.
Necron have that. And yeah, that's for example the Necron. Then we have like one of the other big factions that is also very, very interesting still. It's like the so-called Tau Empire. The Tau, Tau, are basically the youngest of the empires in like the galaxy. They have the benefit of like being well very, very quickly in like developing in weaponry, but they have the big deficit where they are not the like strongest species in general. So they're like very smart, but like not very strong. So they tend to like over the last few like decades, or like well even like 1,000 years, they developed like basically mobile combat suits. We are like talking about like I quote now anime stuff, right? Where they're like sitting there and they can like zoom around the place and use drone techniques very, very much. Like use very, very many like artificial intelligence based stuff. And they have like that benefit as a faction, which is why many people call them the good guys, that they are kind of chill with everyone joining their empire. They're like the Tau say basically anyone can join. Like you can be a human. There's like even if you build an army, there's like certain human characters in like Tau suits that you can send out and like into an army.
You know what they remind me of, actually, is the Corpus from Warframe.
Yeah, yeah, that very much that. Yeah, stylistically and like story wise, very similar. Yes,
Except the
and
Corpus just want to enslave everybody with how rich they are.
yeah, and similar to like the Corpus. I mean, like it's actually kind of similar because the Tau, they just don't do it with like financial means. They basically say, okay, if you live to our edicts, they have like castes where like fire, wind, earth, and water, and these castes dictate basically what they do in society. So it's like I just flat out say they're like literally communists. Like they are like space communists, and they say if you join our empire, you work for the greater good. That's like what they fight for the greater good always. And if you're like part of the empire and you don't really see that the greater good is the greater good, they tend to maybe brainwash you. Maybe.
Okay.
But I could not say anything against it because it's for the greater good, you know. The greater good says it's
Do they have like do they have like an emperor, or like
they have as far as I know, they have like leaders of each caste. So like you have like these people who are like determining what is done when and where, but like they don't really have like one single person who leads them. So like it's
so
like
they're not actually an empire? They just call
yeah, basically yeah. So they're like it's also kind of funny because they're like not the biggest empire, and the problem is because they're so young and like because they like as an empire they're like upstarts while everyone else is already set, and that is like their big disadvantage. So the thing is, because they're like so tech dependent as well, they don't have like something like, for example, a space marine, like a super warrior who just runs in and slashes you in half with a giant sword, which is also kind of weird part of the setting that like basically combat digressed again to like fantasy style combat where you have guns, but like you often have characters that have so-called chain swords, which is like basically a sword but with a chain saw attached to it, or like energy weapons, so melee weapons, really like hammers and stuff like that. So people slash each other up because, well, if you have like a 3 meter tall dude with like a muscle mass of like, I don't know, 400 kilos, if that guy hits you in the face, you're gone anyways. But yeah,
yeah.
so
It's
the
kind of
Tau have
crazy
like
that they don't just have like nuclear wars everywhere. and they actually fight with melee weapons.
Yeah, the thing is the humans basically have planet killers, but the problem with that is, and we get to that in just a second, since they have lost most of their technology over the entire AI thing in their earlier history, they don't really have the tech anymore to do that consistently. So like saying, okay, we eradicate just the planet, we blow it up, is like a very risky thing because you have like limited ammo, and also usually you want to have that planet to be habitable because, well, you want to conquer it, right? And yeah, but these Tau also have like the big disadvantage against like other factions that they are like, they don't have any melee capabilities. They're like so reliant on tech that they just say, okay, we do like we are doing like artillery fire, we are taking our drones, we attack with them. But like when like an orc runs into like a Tau, basically a soldier's face, the orc just says, "Oh wait, I'm a giant muscle mass." Bonks him in the face, and he falls dead over. Right?
The Tau, to me, feel the most human. You know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Yes.
Not the humans, but the Tau are the humans.
Yeah, because like the problem with the humans is, and now we get back to the Empire. The Empire has like many sub factions. There's like, again, the Space Marines, talked about them. We have like the Imperial Guard, which is basically normal dudes. So so the Empire has like that problem where like Space Marines are like bred from like certain humans who are like able to get that. Like they get implants, and many people die when they get the implants because basically you stuff like extra hearts and lungs into people, which is not always very healthy. And yeah, some people don't survive that.
Okay.
And so to like have these Space Marines, well, the Space Marines are basically, you can imagine like a very, very specialized task force that like is like a good resort to like get a problem done. But like every planet needs to be defended. So they have like the Imperial Guard, which if you look them up, they're like normal dudes in helmets with like small guns and artillery fire and tanks. That's like them. They're like very loyal to the Empire, and they're willing to die for the Empire. But they have like, if you look at them, very Second World War tactics. Like they're like actually, they have like gun lines and stuff like that. They're like going into bunkers, while the other people throw with orbital bombardments. They have like laser guns, but also like, yeah, we have like our little mortars that don't do much.
Wouldn't it make more sense for the Space Marines to be like just regular humans in like a small mech suit?
Well, that would be smart, but since like the problem is, again, technology was lost, so they don't have the plans for that anymore. It's like they out of universe. They needed to explain away that like you have certain factions that only have certain units. So they said Dark Age of technology, everything was lost, whoopsie daisy. But sometimes they recover something, and the humans in general, like, for example, the Space Marine power armor is so heavy a normal human could not lift it. So they made like these super engineered warriors to wear them. But also because like the next question would be, why is not everyone who can be a Space Marine a Space Marine? Well, back in the day, the Emperor made 20 children, engineered children. And one of them made basically a codex, which is called the Codex Astartes, which basically tells the Space Marine, your chapters can be only, I think, 1,000 people big. That's as big as the chapter can be. No more, no less, 1,000 people. When one dies, you can take their organs and plant them in another dude, and that is the next one. And when the Space Marine dies, he drops like surplus organs, which you can use to make new Space Marines. So basically, like you would get more, like even if like someone dies and you cannot recover the body, you in the end you get more Space Marines. But like you have like a certain number you can have, and you have to need a certain structure in your chapter, except for one reason: if you're on a crusade. And there's one faction, the Black Templars, which is like basically as the name says, they're like black-colored Space Marines and are Templars. And their shtick is, we are permanently on a crusade, so we don't need to adhere to the rules. So these guys basically say, we have like more than 10,000 people because, well, we're shit out of luck. We are just like stuffing people full with our organs and like make them bigger because we are crusading against chaos, and chaos is still there. And that's like their shtick. So like you have like Space Marine factions that are big, but the others say, nope, the rules say no, and that's the reason why.
You know what I just also realized? That the
What?
angels in Diablo
Yeah.
also copy Warhammer 40k.
As you can see, much of Blizzard's ideas came from like other franchises.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it's kind of fun that like the Empire is like stifled by their like narrow-mindedness to like adhere to a certain set of rules that someone created, because the Emperor, who is like worshipped as a god, when he like reunited Earth back in the day, at least in that timeline, he basically abolished religion. He said, nope, we cannot have blind belief. And then the dude dies, gets set on the throne, people are offered to him, and everyone says, well, we should worship that guy. So basically, it's like a bit ironic in that sense that like humanity became so zealous over like a guy that said, no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Does he actually still give like? They actually still talk, or?
No. So basically he there's like an imperial council that like manages most of the stuff, and the sons of the emperor, the so-called primarchs, they were lost. They over time they just disappeared for whatever reason, and now in the current law, like they like two of them reappeared. One is the guy who like wrote all the Space Marine rules. He reappeared, and the emperor is only able to communicate with one of them at the moment through dreams psychically. So that's the only thing that like why people would know that the emperor could potentially even still be alive, which is like why there's also many skeptics.
Like you mean like they're saying he's making it up and the emperor isn't actually talking to him?
Yeah,
Okay.
and also that the emperor is pretty much dead. Like basically, if you would look up like an image of the emperor right now, like it's literally a skeleton on a throne. Like this guy ain't do anything. He's just sitting there and like not doing anything. And everyone says, well, this guy is still alive. He leads us. And in reality, nothing he does at the moment has anything to do with the empire.
Okay. So actually, though, what exactly do you mean when you say like people offer themselves to him? Like
They
psychic
go
people.
there. They go there and just like use their psychic powers to like channel into him, which kills them. But they go to the throne, to that corpse. They basically like 1,000 people. I think it's pretty much 1,000. Every day gets selected throughout the entire empire. They get prepared. Like, yeah, by the way, in like 2 years, you're offered to the emperor, and they're saying, well, yeah, awesome. I will be one with the emperor. They go there, use their psychic energy, their entire life energy, and die. And that's that. So the emperor can continue on because somehow they said, well, the emperor will continue on if you offer enough psychic energy to him. Because the idea is that the emperor's body will not die as long as his like consciousness does not die. And his consciousness is supposed to be in the warp fighting the chaos gods right now. So the logical explanation is if we give them more psychic energy, he gets kept alive in the warp, which keeps him alive like on the throne. That's the idea.
All right. Once again, we're like, because of my questions, we're entering another tangent, but
yes,
let's get back.
But yeah, so basically, like all of these factions are then like serving the emperor. There's like certain factions, like there's sub-factions, many imperial sub-factions. For example, I talked about the giant robots. So of course, when like the empire spread out over the universe and they lost contact during the Dark Age, many worlds were just like barely settled and needed to survive, and so they regressed to medieval times, right? So basically they had space travel, they landed on a planet, had no resources, had no technology, hoped that Earth would send more stuff, but it never came. So they started farming, right? And these agricultural worlds were then refound by the empire, and they were like basically in the Middle Ages. So you had like knights there, like literally knights, and then the empire found the world again, and they said, oh damn, what are we going to do about that? Because that's like humanity, they are part of our empire, even if they do not know what the empire is, because well, they're knights on horses. What do we do? And then they say, well, who's the best leader on that planet? And they gave him a giant death robot. Like, actually, it's called an Imperial Knight. You can look it up. It's like a 20-meter robot with guns, chainsaws, and stuff. And they are there to like, they have like literally house colors of like an imperial medieval household. And they have like sworn oaths. And they're like as a planetary force. So basically, you have like castles and a giant death robot who runs over those castles and takes them over. And then the empire is happy to have another world where a giant death robot is and maybe some farmers and miners. It's like it's a bit
but do they
weird.
then elevate that world or
no? Well, they would love to probably, but like in the most cases they stay in their like they stay there. It's an imperial world. So if like say I don't know, say like some Tau come over there and just land there and say, well, we want to settle that world. The giant death robot comes and says no, shoots them dead. And then they say, okay, it's still an imperial world. Humans on there, our thing. Like you have to imagine it like this. Like everything on 40k, like every faction except maybe for the Tau is like on the decay. They're not able to keep up like that galaxy-wide game at the moment because like everyone is only in war mode. They're only fighting, and there's no peace. There's like absolutely no peace. If you have like a planet, there's a very good chance that like during your lifetime you get just invaded by aliens and get shot. It's like a thing. And then like if like the empire realizes that as like, oh my god, the aliens took our world, they say, okay, which aliens? And then they say either the army or the space marines or something worse, depending on like the elite factions, the true elite factions that are specialized on something. For example, if you have a demon invasion on a world, they would send over the so-called Grey Knights, which is a space marine order that specializes on demon hunting. Yeah.
What are demons?
Oh, demons. Demons are basically creatures from the warp that basically are like minions of the chaos gods which get projected into reality. It's a bit, it's not like demons in like our world where it's like, oh, there's like hell and there's demons, but like the chaos gods have like avatars in forms of demons or like greater demons which are like sent to the material world basically.
Oh, look, the Diablo demons look exactly like those guys. What a coincidence.
Damn. Yeah, it's like and like there's like specialized factions in like demon hunting. There's like factions that are like specialized in taking down Tyranids or orcs. There's like sub factions everywhere that the empire tries to send everywhere, but like since the empire is like galaxy wide, it's impossible. There's like distances that would take years or like decades to travel to if you travel from one side to the other, just because the distance is so big and warp travel is not like faster than light speed. It can be fast, but there's like stories of like people entering the warp and then coming out 50 years later on the other side, which is not very reliable 100% of the time, because you basically enter the domain of the chaos gods to basically, to go from one end of the hole to the other end and hope that you just arrive.
Yeah.
And that's that. But yeah, that's the main faction. So that's like everyone who's like there without like going too deep into sub factions, because that's like
Okay.
very much information extra.
Who is your favorite faction?
So I'm a very, 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 very big Empire fan, because it stands for everything I stand against. It's like I really like I'm a very, very person who loves freedom, who loves free thought, who loves like independent thought, and the Empire is the exact opposite. So I started my Warhammer playtime with like Space Marine Army. And then I got into the so-called Grey Knights, the Demon Hunters, which are also a Space Marine faction, but again, like specialized on demon killing, because I really like Space Marines in silver with like a knightly aesthetic. That's the main reason. And then I became like a giant Empire stan. Basically, I'm like one of the people who are like when I play a round of Space Marine and I'm in a random lobby, I just write randomly like for the Emperor, or the Emperor protects, and just murder some aliens. But I don't have like a least favorite faction really, because like I like them all because they're like all equally cursed. But I like the Empire the most.
Based on visuals, because that's pretty much all I have right now.
Mm-hmm.
The coolest to me are the Necrons, based on visuals.
They have like a very, very cool aesthetic. I really like that they have like that mix of like the cyber skeletons with like the mainly like black green aesthetic, which is like a very cool color combination. It reminds me a bit like of like it's weird, but like it reminds me of like Razer as like the company with like the black and green, but also like the Egyptian aesthetic as well. Like you have like these obelisks. You have like these the higher the stronger units of the Necrons even have like the pharaoh look going on and stuff like that. It's like very
they're called Pharaon. So
yeah, pharaohs, right?
So actually, it's funny because if you just Google images Warhammer 40k Empire and Warhammer 40k Demons, if you combine those two, it just literally looks like the Eternal War from Diablo.
Yeah, it's that. It looks very similar to that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's like so yeah, that's that. That's like the two armies I play, and that's the two armies I like the most. For Space Marines, if you want a chapter, even though it does not say much to you, but maybe to the viewers, maybe someone knows that, I played the Blood Angels, which are basically red Space Marines, and they have permanent PTSD. So their shtick is that they prefer jetpacks and melee combat.
Okay.
And they're Primarchs, so basically like one of the Emperor's children he produced, who founded them. They basically like that Primarch died, he was murdered, and they have thousands of years after that PTSD from that death. So some of them go nuts, and they build a death corpse, which is like, okay, what do? We paint our armor black, and we go into battle. This will be our last battle, my friends. They jump into battle with chainswords and murder everyone. And in combat, they have like that nice rule that they can go mad and kill your own units. They can go berserk. They're like super strong, super powered because they have a death wish, but they can also like murder each other because they just go crazy and just start hitting each other. It's a bit wacky, but I like just wacky play styles. It's like super fun.
That's cool. I'm just looking them up, so
yeah, everything's fine. Yeah,
it's like so. Are we switching to talking about timeline or the galaxy, or like how do you want to? What direction do you want to take us in?
I would just quickly talk about the timeline, so you know, like everything that's going on. So
actually, before we do start about the timeline, is the timeline sort of the perspective of the timeline in the lore? Is it told from like the perspective of humans?
It's told from the perspective of everyone because it starts pre-humanity.
Okay,
And
I
then
see.
it goes into like a very big human focus, which we are not getting into, because like everything from 30,000 to 40,000, like that time gap is so there's so much happening. That's like the main lore dump, and
Okay.
because like every faction gets like super established there, and you have like the height of like empire versus chaos, where like everyone like just battles each other, like humanity fights itself. So I'm not going into that, because there's like 60 books just like about 5 years of that conflict. It's like
Okay.
very concise. That's because why I'm like not getting like too much into that, but it's everyone, the
All right.
answer.
Yeah, because usually just everything is from the like, for example, take Mass Effect again. Everything comes
Yeah,
from the perspective of humans. So
yeah. There's like
yeah.
actually like a book that came out last year, which is something I can recommend if you have ever encountered the orcs. I don't know the title right now. I would need to look it up myself. I would do it like later. But it's like an orcish book that is entirely written in orcish Cockney English. It's great. It's just like everything is simple minded. Everyone speaks like bad English, basically, like a hooligan, and everyone is like talking and nothing really happens, because all they do is like beat each other up. It's like
Yeah.
great.
That is like
But
my nightmare, is to read that book.
I mean, there's an audiobook for that, I think. So you can have like people scream in your ear. So
Yeah.
but yeah.
That's my nightmare.
Okay.
But it's good that
So
other people enjoy it. So
yeah, like the orcs are basically like one of the fan favorite faction, because they're like the only comic relief you have instead of like everything that is like kind of bleak. So
yeah.
yeah, but anyway, so talking about history. So we start about 60 million years before like actually like anything human related happens. There are, you can imagine, there's like gods who are like not really much explained upon, creatures who live in the universe called the Old Ones, who basically yeah, existed and dominated the universe. That's like the first record of like anything reigning over the universe.
Okay.
There was the creatures that are called the Necrontyr. The Necrontyr are the race that the Necron popped out of. So basically, they were like happening before the Necron became the Necron.
How do you write
And
that?
Necrontyr is written like Necrontyr.
Oh,
So
okay, I see.
Necrontyr.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
And that's basically when the Necron were like still a race of like normal biological beings. And so the old ones basically like dominated the universe, and the Necrons wanted to build like, again, they had like the problem with like solar radiation poisoning. So they said, we are spreading out in the universe because we need to find planets where we can like repopulate and not have our race basically like die from radiation poisoning. So they did that, and when they did, they sadly settled on planets that the old ones controlled.
Okay.
And so they fought them. Sometimes they won, sometimes they lost. And the here's where the Catan come in. The Catan were also traveling the universe and saying, "Well, we hate the old ones, Necrontyr, and you want technology, or you want our help to give you like bodies where you don't have the problem of like dying from like radiation." Because what the Necrontyr found out over time was that even if they repopulate, generations after they repopulated, people would still die of the radiation poisoning. That's how bad it was for like many of the Necrontyr.
Okay.
And so they said, if you kill the old ones with us, we help you, Necrontyr, to gain bodies that don't have radiation sickness. And the Necrontyr said, okay, we do that. And then basically that entire thing happened where they get the metal bodies that regenerate themselves, but they were basically a slave race to the Catan. And so the Necron, who were now the Necron, and the Catan fought the old ones and fought so hard against them that the old ones started losing. This war that started was the call of the war in the heavens. That's just the name it was called, just a general like description. And the old ones decided, damn, we have a problem with like these cyber zombies and with the energy people. What are we doing? And so they decided they create two species. One of them were the Elder. They created the Elder, who were like very psychically adept, because they realized the Necron don't have any psychic powers. So they wanted to have like a psychic species that could fight the Necron. And then they said, we need another species that can repopulate like basically a shock troops very, very quickly. And they created the Orcs. And so the war was going on. The Eldar started populating like different planets. They were created. They developed their psychic potential and fought the Necrons, while the Orcs, as like shock troops, were like spreading like crazy and just beating like up Necrons and even Catan. Even though they were like pure made of out of energy, they were pretty much killable. And since like both species were like a bit psychic adept, they had like a problem that they did not know the consequences of that, and they sadly like summoned eldritch entities from outer space called the Enslavers, which is like giant tentacle monsters who rushed the galaxy. And these Enslavers, they fought now on a 3-side war. So you see like a parallel to like later in like after like a few million years. It was now a like 3-faction war, and the Necron said, okay, now that the Catan are fighting also against another faction, and they seem to struggle with that entirely, we betray the Catan now. So the Necron betrayed the Catan were destroyed, or like nearly destroyed, and the Necron said, well, we still have the Eldritch Horrors. How about we go to sleep in our tombs and wake up after 60 million years, and when 60 million years have happened, we wake up again, and maybe like everyone in the universe has warred so much that they're nearly all dead, and then we take over the universe. That was their plan.
Okay.
So
actually, I don't how like the old ones are really weird to me because they just look like stupid bug dinosaurs, a combo of a dinosaur and a bug. So
yeah, they are basically that. Yeah,
it's kind of weird to me that they managed to control the galaxy, to like dominate the galaxy, because they don't look like something that would dominate. You know, they look like just stupid monsters.
I mean, they pretty much were, but they were smart enough to create species. That's like their thing. So that's why they also took like these like the Orcs, which are like brutes, as like their troops, because well, they do what they cannot, right? And
the Catan, on the other hand, like they kind of look like gods, which is
they're like very much like gods, like even like in essence they seem like very godly, which is probably why the Necron tier, before they like gave up their bodies, probably believed them more, because they have like such an like godly appearance. But so that all happened. The Necron go to sleep. The Elder and the Orcs are basically like fighting the Enslavers. They drive them back. They're like not important for the story anymore. They defeat them, and the Elder build a giant galactic-wide empire. So while the Elder do that, humanity happens, and all that stuff about the Emperor happens as well, which I told about. Like Emperor gets born, travels the world, humanity goes into war, and we're like not hearing anything about these giant empires for like millions of years. They just expand. They just have like peacetime, while the humans are warring against each other, and the Emperor at some point in like the late 20,000s starts to say, okay, we need a grand crusade. I want to get like all these war bands on Earth. We need to work together. I will conquer them and basically make my empire.
Did humans already start to explore the galaxy at that point, do they know anything about the other races, or are they just like fighting
They
against each other?
they at that point, they before they lost their technology to travel space, they didn't know really about any other races. They just knew like they could, and with AI, they could basically like develop technology to just like jump in like to other planets, and that's what they did. And once they wanted to establish each other, the AIs rebelled. So basically, they
Okay.
were like very
So
much
they're
in a
like a
colonization.
bit more contained compared to the
Yeah,
rest of the galaxy.
right.
Okay.
And so basically after like all of that fighting happened and the Emperor conquered Earth, he said, okay, I need like I'm genetically engineering people. First of all, the so-called custodians, these are my guardians, these are like elites, which are basically the blueprint for later the Space Marines, and the so-called Thunder Warriors, which is basically he just superhuman charged the barbarians he conquered and said, well, I need people who kill stuff. Let's take them. And
Okay.
started to retake the solar system because Mars at that point was settled. And on Mars, they had the so-called Mechanicus cults, which basically worshipped AI and technology. If you write Mechanicus, like mechanic, and then just with US hinten, you see how they look. They're like very heavy into body augmentation. And these guys, the Emperor conquered as well, but told them, okay, I don't want religion, but if you want to, you can worship your machines still. That's fine. Just help us build spaceships again. And that they did. And the Emperor then started to like genetically engineer his sons, his 20 sons, who would then later like lead his legions, his Space Marine legions, which he would build up then. Like he would like blueprint how to make super warriors that are like that he can recreate on Mars. And so, long story short, the children were born, and through like I would say unlucky circumstances, the children were like scattered across the galaxy to different planets. And the Emperor had like the goal, okay, we need to build legions and reunite the legions with like their primarch, with like their true leader, so they can like have like that synergy from like where the genetic blueprint for my armies came from. So that's like the idea. So basically, the Emperor as like a leader with his sons below him, and then like the legions who serve his sons, and then like him in total.
Yeah. It seems
Um,
like the game called Mechanicus,
yeah,
it seems to be like something between the Necron
yeah, exactly.
and
They,
the humans.
yeah, exactly. The so-called Adeptus Mechanicus, which is like later called the Mechanicus cult, reforms into the Adeptus Mechanicus under the Emperor, which is like the faction that fights the Necron there. So basically, they
It's
are,
interesting though that even though the game is called Mechanicus,
yeah,
the color scheme of all the promotional material
yeah,
is the color of the Necron.
right.
Very strange.
It's it's like very very strange, but I can recommend if you like turn-based like RPGs, I could recommend like Mechanicus, but I think you're like more real-time with pause person, right? If I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
but I'm fine with turn-based. Like,
Okay.
actually, I just thought, honestly, I didn't think, except for Rogue Trader, I didn't think the games are really much of an RPG kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if there are other RPGs, I would love to play them, actually.
Yeah, like Mechanicus has like is like basically like squad based with like slight RPG mechanics, which is like a bit more like XCOM, I would say. So it's like not very deep RPG mechanics, like very much choice and stuff like that, but like it has like slight RPG mechanics. Let's rephrase it like that. But
Okay.
anyway, so the Emperor just reconquers like the solar system and then starts spacefaring again, trying to find his sons.
Okay.
Which,
Actually, before we continue, does the
yeah,
Emperor actually fight himself? Or does he.
yes,
Okay.
he's also very super powered. Like he's also like genetically engineered. He's like I think he's like 5 meters tall. He's like a giant human man. I don't know. Don't ask me how in human history in that universe they have never seen this man. Like it's never said that he changed body height. He's just that tall. He's just a giant. And he is also like very psychically capable. Like he can like delete your mind, basically. Like he's very overpowered in that regard.
Okay.
And so over like the next few thousand years, like into like the 30,000s, he finds his sons again, reunites them with his legions, and basically starts taking control of everything. While the Elder, at the same time, have the entire thing with hedonism and get deleted. They destroy their own worlds. They because they set Chaos God free through hedonism, and basically get eradicated as like the dominant presence in the universe, which gives humanity the chance to basically expand without resistance, which they do for the most part. They refine some worlds, some old worlds of them, and while all that happens, his like the emperor's brightest son, he calls him Horus, which is one of his children. Horus, like the Egyptian god, is his like master tactician. He gets into contact with chaos, and that's like the first fall of chaos in like a very, very long time, where like he gets corrupted by it over time, and sees a vision in his dreams where where he gets a vision of the empire how it is in current time. So everyone worships the emperor, everything is downtrodden, people die. And so he says, well, I don't want that future, let's rebel. And he starts rebelling, and actually some of the children of the emperor just say, okay, I'm taking my legion with me. Horus is right. We cannot worship you like a god. And so the emperor says, you don't need to. I don't want that. I'm just your emperor. I just want to lead you, but I don't want to be like a deific figure. And so they fight over what is a very, very long time, the so-called Horus heresy. That's like where the name comes from, where the end result is that some of the Primarchs die. The Emperor gets mortally wounded, which forces him on the throne. So like people offer themselves to him. And Horus gets deleted entirely. Like he gets killed and his soul gets eradicated. So he's never reunited with the Chaos Gods, who he was his champion.
Actually, I do have one question though. At this point, are the enslaved, the enslavers and the old ones, are they like extinct? Or
yeah, they go extinct by that time, because the Elder take over the universe and basically eradicate them. Because the Elder find out over time technology that allows them, first of all, teleport unlimited distances without the warp, which is like the only species that can do that. And they find weaponry that can kill the enslavers. So basically, they do that with the help of the orcs, which they tactfully guide the orcs. They don't really interact with them, because the Elder are more like, you could think about them like super, super smart. They're hyper intelligent. So they are like more working in the shadows if they can, because why should someone die if they can just say, hey, orcs that reproduce very fast, go there.
All right, I see.
Yeah, and so humanity does that, fights each other, and after that conflict, so much of humanity is destroyed, because those Space Marine legions, which are giant at that time, they're like 10,000s of like superhuman soldiers that are like bashing each other to death. So much gets destroyed that much of the technology that humanity regained is lost again. So they need to like work with what they have and backwards engineer stuff they have already discovered. And
how does the Emperor actually get wounded? Do we know?
Yeah. So he and Horus fight on a final fight at a final battle. And while that happens, Horus gets empowered with the power basically of all the Chaos Gods, which is enough to wound the Emperor.
Okay.
And so the Emperor gets wounded through pure chaos power. And then because like he is like a superpowered being, survives that hit, but is like wounded and cannot move and needs to rest. And that's what happens like over the next thousands of years, where he like decays into a skeleton, but like projects his mind to find the fight the chaos gods even further, just so the chaos gods don't take over the universe and basically end existence.
Okay.
But yeah, and after all that happens, the Space Marines disperse from the giant legions into like smaller chapters, which have like their own edicts, as I've told before, and have their own systems. They have like as home planets where they have their giant cathedrals, and they pray to the Emperor. So the Emperor, after like defeating Horus, becomes that deific figure. So that is like how that change happens from like, no, we are like very secular, we don't run religion, to, oh, that dude fought against 4 gods and won, so he must be a god himself. And yeah, and so over time, like humanity like the planets themselves distanced from one another, and humanity just tried to survive, because that is the time when, for example, the first contact with the Tyranids happens. Some worlds just disappear, they were eaten entirely. The Eldar try to resettle some of their old worlds, while the Orcs try to like find something to fight, because their purpose was to fight the old ones.
When you
at
say
the start,
the world's deleted, like, is the whole world just deleted, or just everything that's on it?
The world is just a giant rock that's left. So everything on so it does not get the planet itself, the core does not get destroyed, but everything that could possibly live there is gone. The Tyranids just eat everything and go to the next planet.
Okay.
They are capable of like limited space travel. Like they can. It's a bit weird because the Orcs also work with spores, but the Tyranids also, like the hive mind, can also send like hive spores, which is just like giant capsules of like biomass through space, and just like sends it on a planet, and that's how Tyranids spawn there.
By the way, any connection between the Tyranids and the enslavers?
Nope, none. The Tyranids are like their own very own thing, and that is like what. So
it kind of looks. It kind of looks like octopus versus squid.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, like with the Tyranids, which is like a bit weird, because the Tyranids in themselves, I think they should like. I think they wanted to make a faction that is just like the cosmic horror of just something that wants to consume. So they developed that, and that is their thing. The only lore we know about the Tyranids is like what units they have, like that they consume biomass, and that like the main fleet of the Tyranids is still not in our galaxy. So even like the Empire loses like tons of planets to the Tyranids, the main fleet is not there, which is why what is like the spooky thing about them, that like these creatures that win over entire systems by just eating everything, that is not the main force. That's just like a side thing.
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy that there's like something from outside the galaxy that looks so similar to something from a different dimension.
Yeah. But that is like well, the Tyranids do first contact, right? The Tau start developing, like all of that is like happening in the background while humanity tries to like get a foothold again, but never really does. And over the next 1,000 years is basically like when like the empire establishes itself as like a government, a religion, and like of course as like this giant force in the galaxy, while also trying to survive, winning some planets, losing some. And we got like very little like world or universe changing lore up until in our current, like in our real time, it was I think 2019. It's like at the very end of the 41st millennium. It is like you have like a guy. He's basically the antagonist, if you want to call him that, of like the setting. He's like the strongest chaos guy there is, Abaddon the spoiler. Abaddon is written like Abaddon.
Okay.
He's like the next chosen of chaos, basically, and he did a lot of crusades over the storyline.
Why
In the
are the
last
chosen of chaos always humans and not like Eldars?
because humans are easy to corrupt, basically. That's the thing.
Okay.
The Eldars don't tend to like corrupt that easily, except for like Slanesh because of the Dark Elder. That's like their thing. But humans are like the best to corrupt. That's the main thing. Because like the orcs are too simple-minded. Otherwise, like the Chaos Gods would love to have the orcs because, well, they murder everything. Cool. The Blood God Khorne would like that, but
Okay.
well, they don't. The orcs have their own belief system in like Gork and Morg, which is like I think Gork is strong and cunning, and Morg is cunning and strong. That's like their own definition. It's like super dumb. It's like
Okay.
they say they're the best gods because they're orcish gods and they bonk everything. They apparently exist, but yeah, and then you like the Tau are like absolutely anti-religious, so they are like they believe only in the greater good. They're like brainwashing each other. So basically,
Yeah, but
chaos.
I feel like if you know that the chaos gods exist,
Yeah,
it's not really exactly a religion, you know? If
that
you have
is true.
definite
Yeah,
proof that they're there and they're like
that
doing
is true.
stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I would agree with that. Yes. So basically, like the Chaos Gods, they pick their chosen humans because again, like they have the human mindset. They are corruptible, so they take them. That's like the easiest path for them, and also it weakens the Emperor, who apparently fights them. So that's like a double bonus for them. And so Abaddon had like 12 crusades, which all failed, which is a bit weak for like apparently failed, let's say it like that, which is became a giant meme because the dude who's like the big bad guy who will conquer the universe at some point apparently cannot like win over a single planet. And then they made like 13th Crusade. And that 13th Crusade happened on a planet called Cadia. Cadia is written Cadia.
Okay.
It is a world that is basically at a great rift in the nearly like center of the galaxy, where like a giant warp rift is. So
Looks
like
beautiful though.
yeah, Cadia looks beautiful. So Cadia was like basically a bastion against chaos invasions. So basically, if something came out of the rift, they would just go there and bang, shoot that thing. And Cadians were like known, like the Imperial Guard on Cadia was known for like being the best defenders the Empire had, like as normal humans. So they had also saying like Cadia falls before the Guard falls because they were like absolute badasses. They were like, no, we are not fucking around. Something comes out of that giant hole in the sky, we're gonna kill it. And so Abaddon, like with his like 12 failed crusades, again, apparently, started his 13th, where like he started planting seeds, like in terms of like planning how like those 12 crusades attack Cadia at the same time. So basically, he has like, for example, devices planted on planets that would help him take over Cadia, because that planet was like a thorn in his eyes to start a giant crusade. And what he did was he found out during his crusades that like these the Necron pylons were like dampeners or like enhancers of warp energy. And so he found a giant thing, a giant like Necron spire, which he took and bombed into Cadia. He just nuked the planet. He just jacked the thing into that. And so, because it had chaos, like warp empowering abilities, the giant warp rift in the sky over Cadia expanded to a giant rift through the entire galaxy.
Yeah, so actually, Cadia itself is not that beautiful. But when that event happens, then it becomes beautiful.
Yeah, because it. So sadly, Cadia does not really survive that attack.
Yeah.
Cadia gets a bit destroyed. And so, yeah, the entire galaxy split into like two halves. Um, Basically a north and the south, if you can call it that. Like if you would look from
Yeah.
the top, yeah. So so that was like Abaddon won that crusade after 13 attempts. Like at his 13th attempt, he just won. He was happy, and Chaos Gods were happy because now Chaos could spread through the galaxy. And Terra, so Earth, was split off from another half of the galaxy, which of course Chaos used to like conquer planets there. And over like the next 100 years, basically one of the Emperor's sons came back. They developed they enhanced like the Space Marines. They tried to get warp travel working again to the other side of the galaxy, and that's like where we are in the story right now.
I find it kind of funny that Abaddon
Yeah.
has the same armor as Horus.
Yep.
But he's like, I like that idea. I'm gonna build the exact same thing, but I'm gonna put spikes and skulls on top.
Yep. You've understood Warhammer armor design. Wait, we can make the same thing, but spikes and skulls. Here's that.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's like kind of funny because again, like Abaddon is like such a very, very, very interesting character because he's like chosen by all of the Chaos Gods, similar to Horus. He's like a very similar like path as Horus, where he's like, oh, I'm like super powered, I'm very strong, I have my conquests. But then like again, he does like those giant crusades and they go nowhere until like they say basically like a few hundred years later, he does another one and blows up the thing that mainly defended the Empire for like all-out chaos invasion, which I find very interesting, like that he played the long game. But it also felt for many like people who are playing the game that like they said, oh, he wins that conquest now, like this like crusade, he wins that now because he's a joke character to us. We don't take him seriously anymore. He lost every time. Like,
kind
what
of.
else is that?
Do you think his given name is Abaddon, or do you think he changed it after he became the chosen of the chaos?
So how that works is with Space Marines, they have usually a normal name, and once they get like their genes and stuff, they get a Brotherhood name that is fitting for the chapter. So it could be like, I don't know if he has a name beforehand, but at least his Space Marine name was Abaddon, which I find always so funny because they are like, this name, he could be called Evil Guy, right? Like,
we're gonna call you Doom. And
we call you Doom.
Just promise that you won't try to destroy the galaxy.
Okay, I'm not trying to. like it's like very funny because like every Space Marine chapter has like their naming convention, and like they have like this like pig Latin where they have like Latin adjacent names, but it's clearly made up. With like most of the names of the Empire, like of organizations, are like called adeptus, which is like not a real word, but like then, and they try to have that, but it's a bit weird. But Abaddon is like literally a bad guy name, right?
Yeah.
It's like that. But yeah,
kind of like when you name a character. When you make a character in like games, and you name it exactly what it's gonna be.
Dude, you mean the rogue Dusk Shade Blade or whatever that name is, the stealth character that has like 3 darkness names in it. Yeah. It's kind of funny, yeah. But that's where we are at the moment. Basically, like now, some of the Emperor's kids show up again after being gone for 10,000 years, and we are like the Empire gets a little bit of a resurgence, which is great, but still the other factions are existing and trying to do their stuff. Though we have like little insight on that because many of the authors, sadly, love to write Empire stories because it's human, and we lose much on the lore on other factions. If you notice, like after like the entire War in the Heavens thing, like everything is chaos and humanity, sadly.
Okay, so actually, let's just summarize. In modern time, who are like the major factions It's the
The major
Empire,
Yep.
the Tau,
Yep.
the demons, I guess, or the Chaos,
Chaos.
Necrons.
Necrons.
I don't know if we can call orcs a major faction. They're kind of just like
I would
stupid, do
call
whatever.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but they are somewhat a major faction. Yes, I would call them
Okay,
still
and
a major
now
faction.
I'm a bit confused about the situation of the Eldar and the Dark Eldar.
So the Elder and the Dark Elder, they have like giant ships where they live on. Or the Dark Elder have some planets they still live on that are like totally corrupted, and they just are there. I would call the Dark Elder less of a major faction than the normal Elder, because the Dark Elder are like, they are their own thing, but they're
Okay.
like compared to like a sub faction, I would call them more, because they're just the stragglers who survived the apocalypse. While the normal Elder have their craft ships, they try to repopulate and get galaxy-wide control, but they're like still dangerous in their own right. So I
So
would
the
call
Elder
the
is still
Elder.
also a major faction. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought the Elders were kind of like moved aside after the whole
Yeah, the
chaos
problem
hedonism thing.
the problem with the Elder is that they basically barely got any development over the last 2 decades. Like
Okay.
when I started playing Warhammer, the Elder had nearly as much lore as they have now, because there have been like nearly no Elder books. So
Yeah.
basically,
Well, to be honest, though, when you're so scientifically advanced, technologically advanced, it's really hard to advance further. You know.
Yeah, that's also true. Yep.
Also,
And
I did notice that some of the Dark Elders, their armor just kind of looks like Necron.
yeah,
Is,
it's very very inspired by that, but they don't really, like, as far as we know, don't have like very much overlap.
yeah.
And yeah, the last major faction, at least like still growing further and further, are Tyranids, that are like still a faction that is there, though they don't have like a much like tactical mindset to take over the galaxy. They're just like a doomsday clock that comes ever closer.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
is there anything else we need to talk about, or are we pretty much like covered for the like, I don't know how to call it, the like,
The universe itself and this timeline,
yeah.
like, yeah, I would say that's that majorly, yeah. But like everything else would like go into way too much detail, like more than we already have. And yeah, it's like, again, you have like so many books, and these are like 500-page books that like are in the hundreds. Like it would take
Okay.
forever, but that's
We've been
the general
recording for
gist.
about 2 hours, so we'll probably end soon. But I just want to, what, for someone who, like me, who has like nothing about Warhammer,
Yeah.
what books or games would you recommend to start with?
I would recommend to start with, if you want books or games, I can always recommend the Dawn of War series, because you have like many factions, like especially in Dawn of War 1, you have many factions that you can play and play the campaigns with, and you have setting agnostic space marine faction that is like made for the game. So basically, you explore the world a bit with that. I would also recommend, if you want to like read up on the lore itself. It's like all of the Horus Heresy books are very good, but again, that's a very long line. Like that is like very much background information. Then you know like the general gist of the universe.
There's 10 books from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, 10 main books. Yep, and then
Oh, wait a
many
minute.
little.
There's
Yeah,
10,
there's
10
more.
main books, and overall there's 64 books.
Yeah, 64 in general. That's like that's like very much. That's why I'm saying like you would need to be careful with that. Otherwise, there's like a very big bunch of like general lore channels that do like quick summary write ups, like get the factions to know faction videos and stuff like that. That did that for like 20 years.
Okay.
Like for example, one YouTube channel I can recommend very much usually is Arch Warhammer, like ARCH Warhammer. who did like an entire summary of all the Horus books and all of the other stuff. So if you want to have a faction, he tells you about it, and like that helps also. And if you want to like really want to know much about like the just like how the universe in general, like how, for example, like a Tyrannid invasion looks like, I can always recommend Space Marine 1 and 2, because those give you like the feeling of a Space Marine, how a Space Marine behaves, and gives you like a nice story with a hack and slash that is like engaging for everybody, I would say. Like,
So I'm gonna ask this a bit more specifically now.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
I don't want to watch more summaries on YouTube than the summary that we did. I want to buy my first Warhammer book.
Yeah.
What do you think is the best first Warhammer book? Also, it's gone really dark over there.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, wait a second. I turn on my light. Give me 1 second. Why has it gotten so dark? Oh, damn. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah.
I would say I need to look up the name. Give me 1 second. I would recommend the Eisenhorn Omnibus. I will write it to you in chat, so
a
little bit of an easier time.
Okay.
There. It's like one of the best stories that is like going into like empire stories and about a guy called Eisenhorn who talks about is about like a guy who has served for like basically forever, and his like stories about like how his life went and the empire in general. So you get to know the setting very, very good. So the Eisenhorn books, which are like later, like in theory, there's like later Eisenhorn book, but that's a very good book to start on. That is my recommendation.
Okay. Are the Warhammer books like written like actually like interesting and engaging like normal books, or is that just like a lore dump?
They are interesting in their own right. So there's like, it depends, of course, on the author who writes them. But I would say the books themselves have like a very, very, on average, are like very entertaining to read, because you get a very good gist about like how this universe actually like acts and behaves, and how these people think as well. So you get like very good like POVs in general from like different factions, which is always great.
All right. So thank you very much for talking so much with me. Mainly you talking, which is great, but probably hurts your voice or something because you talk so much, which is actually exactly what I wanted. So,
okay, I wanted to say sorry if I talked way too much.
No, that's what great. I really enjoyed that.
But I enjoyed talking to you for like the first time face to face. Is like it's like great, actually. It was very fun. It was very engaging. You asked very good questions. Again, I hope I could convey as much as I can in that amount of time. It's like very, very hard, to be honest, because you saw like I start going somewhere and then I need to go to another topic because everything is a bit connected. But
especially when I ask so many questions.
You did not ask too many questions. Like that was the perfect amount.
Yeah, it's just crazy though to me that like the topics that like the 2 episodes that we've done so far, they have a lot of content about those original works. But compared to Warhammer, it's like minuscule. Warhammer has so much more content than like anything else.
It's like the problem with that is just like because you have like so many authors writing different stuff and everything is canon, instead of like where like with Bleach or like with Dragon Ball especially, you have like a guy writing the thing.
Yeah.
And that is like the only guy who writes like a thing. Like there's every year on average there's like 7 or 8 Warhammer books at least coming out. Like if you want to, you can spend your entire year reading about that one galaxy, which is
kind of like Star Wars, but on like steroids.
Yeah.
in terms
Yeah.
of content.
It's like very much content. I'm not saying everything is good, but like most of it is also like quality. So like you can spend much time. I've just adjusted to like only listening to audiobooks because I just cannot spend that time reading anymore. Like if I want to know
Okay.
more, I just listen to it. It's just so much easier for me at least.
All right.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you. That was a ton of fun. And
Yeah.
thanks all the viewers. If you want to find us, I'm gonna put links in the description, but also you can just search the names below our camera on Twitch or YouTube. And yeah, I don't really want to like talk too much about all the YouTube stuff, so that's up to you guys, the viewers, if you want to engage further. So thank you, everyone, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye.